been muted.
But I was trying to unmute you. All right. So we will start with Marlo.
Hi, this is Marlo Russell. Can you hear me?
Yep, I sure can. Thanks.
Okay. I'm in Port Huron, Michigan, and I am a client service manager.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I'm looking at my list here. Tara?
Hello, my name is Tara. I am in Statesville, North Carolina with Sherry Bistration Associates.
Great. And what is your role there, Tara?
I'm the client service manager.
Perfect. And how about Katie?
Hi, this is Katie Clayton, and I am the receptionist and the schedule coordinator in San Rafael, California.
Great. We've got East Coast and West Coast. We're covering both sides of the spectrum here in the States. All right. And let me glance here at my list. Again, I don't. And Heidi, are you able? It looks like Heidi. Thank you. So we'll move on. Got you the opportunity to speak. How about Kelly?
Do a pin after.
Kelly Brock in Fredericksburg, Texas with Bridge North Wealth Advisors, and I am the financial planning assistant and client service as well.
Perfect. And Kelly, I saw that Dee and Sharissa had registered. Are they there with you today, or are they calling in
both
separately?
have these register appointments.
Oh goodness. Okay. Well, poor things. I hope they're well. I just didn't want to leave them out if they were sitting right there with you. So Kelly's got a pretty large practice that they support. So there were 3 of them that had planned to join, but glad to have you with us, Kelly. All right. And let's see. I think we got. Oh, Kaylin.
Hi, I'm Kaylin. I'm in Lakeland, Florida, and I'm a client service coordinator.
Perfect. And Heidi, it looks like you're unmuted.
Yes, I'm Heidi Wampler, and I am the administrative assistant to Ryan Romines in the practice of Gilmore and Romines, and we are located in San Rafael, California, just outside of San Francisco.
Great. So we've got the East Coast, the West Coast, the North, and the South, and Texas all today. So that's great. Next, we're going to be a phone line. So I know this is a little bit different. You who've participated in the past have is once you mute your line, if you share that by raising your virtual hand. So you'll see in the right-hand side in the pane, there's a hand you can click on to raise your hand. So if you would like to comment as we go, we don't want you to feel inhibited at that. And you can do so by raising your hand or typing in to the chat screen a message in there. All right. So we will go ahead and mute all the lines. And I will move forward. Maybe I will if my screen will let me. Okay. So our content expert today is Sarah Leffler, And Sarah, I do have you unmuted. So rather than reading what's on the screen here, Sarah, if you would just share with everyone a little bit about your practice like we have up on the screen and your role in that practice.
Right, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah Leffler. I'm the Administrator Client Service Manager for Corey Neesmith with Ameriprise Financial, and we are located in Richmond, Virginia.
All right, and Corey, you just have the one advisor, Corey, and then you have 2 staff members, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you for being willing to be our content expert today, and we will dig into it now. So what is group service frequency? Let's just start there if I can spit my words out. It allows you to document the frequency in which your practice sees each client, and it serves as your primary scheduling tool. Now, a sidebar note on this is it becomes your primary scheduling tool after the phone list integration. So when you are brand new to working with the KMG practice management team, you first have to go through that whole process, which most of you know about, of having to do the whole integration in the phone list and then shift to the use of the group service frequency for your scheduling. It is a monthly tool, or one of the group service frequency tools is a monthly tool, and it gets imported into your Connect site. And just keep in mind that before you can do the import, you have to have the client, each client at the client level, their group service frequency entered into Contact Manager. So we could, if you're not familiar with that process, we can help you with that in your production meeting. But it is basically done via the group tab and then within the household parentheses client. So if you look at it and see where it says household client in parentheses, that's where you go to enter the group service frequency. It does provide a means for consistent scheduling, so based on what the advisor's preference is combined with clients. You may have some clients that can only meet, they're teachers and they can only meet in July and December or something, and you're able to set it up as such. Or a client that can only meet on Tuesday afternoon, and you're able to monitor and keep track of that and consistently schedule them that way. I mentioned that the monthly report is just one of the group service frequency reports, and it's the one that obviously is used the most frequently itself as a report, but there are additional reports, and those are, they provide for periodic reconciliation, so it allows for you to confirm all clients have a service frequency, one of those reports does, and another one helps you balance the meeting load, so you can try to not have months that are way too heavy and months that are way too light, or based on advisor preference, you're able to use the one of the reports for balancing out how that meeting load should look. So now let's get into Sarah's process. And Sarah is actually the one in her practice who did report setup for all the customized reports. So when you're first setting up your GSF reports, you have to create a customized report, and she did that for their practice. Following the Connect guides, their practice had not previously used GSF. And Sarah, if you would share with us about how often you run it. I know I have it up on the screen, but I don't want to be the one that talks the entire time. So
Right. Well, I try to import it the Monday or Tuesday of the third week of the month. That way we can review it a little bit before the month starts to schedule all of his clients. So I'm actually planning on importing our June GSF tracker this afternoon.
Great.
Yeah.
Good timing. Good timing for the CLS call then.
Yeah.
All right. I would like to take a couple of poll questions, just a couple simple quick ones now. And I'll shoot the first one out there, and relevant to what Sarah just shared. do you have a consistent time in the month in which you run and import the GSF? So if you wouldn't mind answering on your screen there. And I'll give it just a second. All right. Perfect. It looks like everybody who replied, 100% said yes, you do. So that's great. So let me ask you a second poll question here. Are you importing at least 6 weeks in advance? So for example, the example that Sarah just gave of April for June, are you doing it, for example, in the middle of this month for the month after next? All right. For the results on that poll, it looks like the majority are. We have a small percentage that has not been doing that, so hopefully we can fill you in on some things today that will help you see why it would be helpful to do so, to run it in that frequency. All right, move on with Sarah's process. Sarah enters the GSF assignment. Of course, she's already done it and confirmed it's in there for the existing clients, but she enters it for new clients in Contact Manager during the setup process. So as she's getting them all the setup pieces done, that's when she makes sure it's in the system. And then she has run reconciliations to make sure that all her clients have a GSF and Alpha Num assigned. And Sarah, you shared that you used your advisor's full name in Alpha Num 1.
Yes,
correct?
we do.
All right, and that was just a preference point as far as full name versus initials or something?
It was just what had been in the system actually before I had started to work for Corey. So it was already set up as that Alpha Num 1, so I just continued to use it.
Okay, perfect. And that leads to a point of whatever method your practice chooses, anyone's practice chooses for entering the advisor's name in Alpha Num 1, is that you always want to keep it consistent. So if it's full name, always full name. If it's initials, always the same initials. You know, 3 initials versus 2 will matter when you go to pull the report. And I would highly recommend consistency across the board if you have multiple advisors. So if you're using initials for one, use initials for all, and full name and so on. All right. Sarah, if you would share with us a little bit about the GSF types you use.
Right. Okay. So for our clients that have assets with 100,000 or more, we have them. Most of them are semi-annual group service frequency, but I set them at a quarterly GSF because we like to do in between high calls where we just check up on the client, make sure that they're doing okay if they need anything from us. So we use that as a call on the group service frequency tab in Contact Manager, and then when they actually are physically having a meeting with the advisor, or if they're having a phone meeting, it would be selected as a meeting. So it makes sure that we are hitting each of those clients at least 4 times a year, making sure that we don't forget about them, and yeah, it
Okay,
helps.
great. So the high calls, that's literally a hello?
Yes.
Not,
yeah,
not a meeting you prepare for, correct?
Right. We're just checking up, making sure that everything is going well with them. If they need anything from our office, just trying to check up on them and making sure they're doing okay.
Okay. And does the advisor do that high call, or do you or Heather make those, or is it a combination?
We go through the clients that have the high calls for that month, and I go through it with the advisor, and he decides which clients that he's going to call and then the clients that he would like for me to call. But it's mainly just the advisor or me.
Okay. And as far as what you shared about a meeting, so just for me to clarify my understanding on that, it is classified in your GSF as a meeting, whether it's going to be face-to-face or by phone.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And you guys have not had reason or need or desire to use mailing. So you
No, yeah, we've never really used mailing.
Right. Right. And that's fine. A lot of practices don't. Okay. Let's move on. And again, rather than my reading through or, you know, just conveying what you do after you've imported it, if you wouldn't mind sharing basically the steps we see on the screen, but just in your own words.
Right. So after I import that report for the certain month, it'll show the date if they're on the calendar in Contact Manager, and if it shows the date that they're already pre-scheduled, I hit scheduled for the, I forgot what the tab is called, the
GSF Status.
Yeah, GSF Status. And then those who don't have a pre-scheduled meeting, I take that list to my advisor and he determines if he would like to meet with them or not, and if he would like to do a phone meeting or a face-to-face meeting. If their GFS status changed to do not call based on the advisor's direction, if he does not feel like he needs to meet with them, I change that to do not call or to next GSF. And then all the ones that have not been scheduled that are on that tracker, I attempt to reach out to schedule them on our calendar.
Perfect. Great. Exactly what we would recommend. So, and then Sarah had shared with me that she notes in the details all of her attempts to schedule. So if she uses LM for left message, or if an email was sent and the date that she did that, and we're going to look at a sample of that here in a minute. And then Sarah does typically make 2 call attempts and then emails on the 3rd. Is that correct?
Correct. Unless I have other direction from the advisor, if he lets me know, oh, this client is more likely to get back with you if it's email or vice versa.
So he may indicate that to you in the first run through?
Right, when we go through the clients that have not been pre-scheduled.
Okay, great. All right, so here's an example of Sarah's GSF. I know it's rather skeletal, I guess I should say, of a example of the GSF tracker, but wanted to include across the top all of the columns. And then, of course, those that aren't showing information are ones that are specific to a client and we don't need on today's call, and blocked them out for confidentiality as well. But you'll see an example over under the details. On the second one, you'll see LM for left message on home phone on 316, and then left message on cell phone on what, like I mentioned on the previous slide, of which phone it was on and that type of thing and exactly when. So there's no question of, did you try, you know, maybe the advisor when he reviews it again would say, well, did you try this one? And she knows exactly which one she tried. You'll notice that the GSF status on both of those showing are in progress. That is going to be the primary status that you see as you work within it. But what I would like to do is take a look at all the GSF statuses that are available to make sure that everyone's familiar with proper use of those, and to just touch on how proper use of those can effectively manage the process. And my screen's thinking about it. I've got the little blue rolly wheel. There we go. All right. So the statuses we have are do not call, in progress, letter sent, next GSF, scheduled, and unable to schedule. The do not call we recommend that be determined only by the advisor, and that would be like Sarah mentioned in her process, prior to her making attempts to schedule, that Corey reviews the list and says, no, I don't need to see this one, or no, you don't need to reach out to that one, and she changes those to do not call. In progress is the one I mentioned will be used the most frequently. That's while you're working through it all, obviously. And then there's letter sent, if you choose to send out a letter, and we'll touch on that later. Next, GSF is generally determined by the advisor, or we strongly advise that it be determined by the advisor upon being unable to schedule. Scheduled is obvious, and then unable to schedule is what you would mark the status after 3 attempts by at least 2 methods. We do recommend that you try at least 3 times by a minimum of 2 methods. So call and email, call and letter if you need to, that type of thing. And then if you're unable to schedule, then it pops back up to that option by the advisor, 2 statuses up, that if it's marked unable to schedule, and then go back through the list with the advisor for those, he or she can at that point determine for the team member to continue pursuing trying to schedule, or just bump them to the next GSF. So coming back to Sarah's process, she shared that she does use that method of the at least 3 attempts, and then mark them unable to schedule, and then would review those unable to schedule items with her advisor, and the advisor would determine whether to keep on trying or change them to next GSF. So she does use that best practice recommendation. And Sarah, you said so far you have not chosen to send a no response letter?
Correct.
Okay. So they have not had need to use the letter sent status because they have not opted to use a no response letter. I'd like to pause here, and I'm not going to do a poll, but I'm curious to know if any of the rest of our attendees today have used the no response letter. So if you've used the no response letter, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand on the screen. And I'm going to take a look and see how many hands we have. Okay, we've got just a few who've used the no response letter, and you can click to take your hands back down now. Thank you. And what I'd like to do is when we get to the discussion time is if any of the few of you who raised your hands on using the no response letter would be willing to share in what scenario you've used it and how you have found it helpful, I'd welcome that input from you. So I'll bring that up during our group discussion time. All right. And then, Sarah, you said that you do cover it, cover the tracker in weekly recap, correct?
Most of the time, but some weeks we do not. A lot of our focus in our weekly recap is business processing, but we do try to hit it every so often.
Okay. And we would encourage everyone to cover it at least once a month in the weekly recap meeting, preferably the week of the recap following when it has been imported so that it's fresh and you can go through it. But we do understand that it might not be something that can happen every single week. It's helpful to do so in recap on a weekly basis just to take a brief look at it to see if there's any additional things hanging out there that you could cover during that time while you have the advisor captured. So Sarah had shared with me that she and the advisor pretty much cover it offline, not in recap, but recap would be another place that we would recommend taking a quick gander to say, oh yeah, I needed to ask you about this piece or that, or this person or that. All right. So that was Sarah's process, and now I'd like to talk about the outcome she has experienced from it. And Sarah, would you share what you consider the advantages in using the group service frequency tracker?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we had the group service frequency tracker, we used an Excel spreadsheet, and it just seemed to be very cluttered and disorganized and hard to keep track of. So when we started using this tracker, it helped me pick up people that I was missing that were supposed to be scheduled in that certain month, and it also it reduces the amount of time spent on scheduling because we started doing pre-scheduling, and it just made everything a lot more clear and organized and easy to use.
Perfect. Great. I am going to ask our third and final poll question of today. And let me get that rolling for you. So I wanted to ask, is your practice pre-scheduling to take full advantage of the GSF? So Sarah just mentioned the use of pre-scheduling, and I wanted to check and see if everyone else is pre-scheduling. All right. It looks like everybody's doing a fantastic job and using pre-scheduling. That's perfect. Glad to hear it. And I went ahead and popped up on the screen Sarah's prior method, as she combined it into what she was sharing there. So we have covered that. And then Sarah has used the other GSF reports, so monthly totals and no GSF. And Sarah, you said you found both of those helpful in their own ways.
Yeah, especially the monthly totals report, because when we first ran that report, we noticed that some of the months were heavier than others. So that way I was able to pinpoint those clients and move their GSF so that all of the months were somewhat equal. So now we have, rather than like 40 meetings in April and 20 in May, we kind of moved around everything so all of the months are around the same amount of scheduled meetings that we're supposed to have.
Perfect. Good. And then you did take a look at the no GSF report.
Yes.
To make sure nobody was missed. Okay.
Right.
Awesome. All right. So I'd like to get into a little bit of group participation time. So if you are using a different process, or maybe you have found a way to a little extra nuance to the process or something. If you're using a different process in any manner, would you please raise your hand if you'd be willing to either share that or type it in. If you're not comfortable, you can type it into the question box if you'd rather share it non-verbally. We'll give it a second and see if anybody is raising their hand to share that. All right. If you raised your hand earlier, I don't have anyone who's indicating they're using a different process. So if you raised your hand earlier, the few people who did, that you've used a no response letter, if you would be willing to speak to that and share with the whole gang how you've used it, what scenario has caused it, and if you have found success or not in that. If you wouldn't mind raising your hand to indicate you'd be willing to share that, we'll unmute you. All right. Thank you, Amanda, for volunteering on that. I will unmute you. So Amanda, if you would share how you've used the no response letter and what you have found it to bring or not bring. Whoops, I thought I unmuted her. Amanda, can you hear me?
I can, and it told me, can you hear me now?
Yep, now I can. Yep.
Okay. We acquired a new practice last May from a retiring advisor, and there was some outdated information in terms of phone numbers. And while we were, and it wasn't so much the group service frequency at that point, but once we tried to schedule all of the introduction meetings with the new clients, and we were able, to successfully schedule so many, but when we couldn't get a hold of so many people, we did assign them group service frequencies. And now as they're coming around again, 6 months from their original, what would have been their original date, we still have been unable to reach out to certain people because we don't have, white pages, still wasn't able to get us a good phone number for them. So we've had to use the no response letter and the please call us letter, hoping to get in touch with some people.
Okay, and it did
We
generate
were very successful. Yes, we did.
Okay, great.
Probably a dozen letters that we've had to send. We've had about at least 50% response.
Okay, great, great. So that is a good tool if you find yourself in a situation where, whether like in Amanda's case, you are unable to, you don't even have a means to contact the client. It's a good way to go about it. Or if you've tried by, 3 times by 2 different means and you're getting nowhere, you can also use it to let the client know, hey, we've been trying to reach you to schedule, and then you have a compliance documentation through letter, through correspondence, that you also tried to reach the client, and so that kind of covers you as well, from a compliance standpoint. So thanks for sharing, Amanda. And you can lower your hand. Anybody else that wants to share any other way of the hands that went up before, any other way that they use the no response letter? Feel free to raise your hand. All right, then I will open it to ask if there are any other questions or thoughts, any ideas anybody has come across in the process, or questions that were spawned by today's call that you would like to ask. Please raise your hand for that, and we will unmute you, or you can type your question in the question box. We'll give it just a few seconds here. All right. I'm going to presume by no raised hands that we were all inclusive in our presentation today. We'll take that as a positive. And we will move on. Before we finish up today, I did want to share what we would define as a success in use of the GSF, and we've basically covered that today. So clients will become aware of their service frequency if you continue to keep a consistent frequency. Clients get used to it. So it is a part of kind of training the clients to get used to when they're coming in and how it rotates each year. In using pre-scheduling, it eventually becomes second nature to clients. So for those practices that have been using pre-scheduling for a while, I'm sure they could speak to this, to share stories of what it was like before and what it's like after pre-scheduling. And the clients do get used to it. At first they might have a little bit of feedback or whatever, but then they get used to how it processes that way and they actually begin to like it. And a really great piece of using pre-scheduling and the group service frequency for that purpose is that it reduces or eliminates. We hope it eliminates, but we know it at least reduces prepping in a last-minute rush. So you know when they're coming in, you can do your case prep ahead of time. If they weren't able to be confirmed, you don't spend time doing case prep that is needless and going to just go by the wayside. And let me get in those good old compliance requirements, make sure we touch on those today. So per Ameriprise compliance, all contact or course, including correspondence with a client, must be documented in SmartPad notes and Contact Manager. And so you can document the phone calls when you attempt to reach out to them by phone by just manual entry into the SmartPad. And emails will be automatically documented there if they're generated from Contact Manager. So you have to make sure that you start the email from Contact Manager to have them automatically placed in the SmartPad there. All right, let me open the floor one more time just to ask, does anybody have any additional information they want to share, questions, or anything like that?
Vicki, it looks like we have a question in the questions box.
Okay, great. Would you share that with us, Peggy, please?
Yep. Does KMG have instructions on how to import the GSF from Contact Manager?
We do. It is located in Turnkey Solutions, and I believe we will be providing, am I correct, Peggy, that we will be providing that path on the follow-up PDF?
Correct.
Okay, great. So that will be provided on the follow-up PDF, and you will notice when you go into Turnkey Solutions and take the path to get there, there are the instructions for all of the GSF reports that we've touched on today. So for the import of the monthly as well as the monthly totals report, the no GSF report, and a couple other bits of information are in there. Great question. Thank you for asking. Do we have any others? Okay. Well, we will be standing by for the next 10 or 15 minutes for questions. If you want to reach out by email or give us a call, my email is Victoria, VICTORIA.L, like Larry, .Walton, W-A-L-T as in Tom, O-N as in Nancy, @ampf.com. Or my line is 248-404-9660, and I'm at extension 230. So just know I'll be available for the next few minutes for calls if you have any other questions that you want to take offline. Or if you think of something later, feel free to shoot an email to me. Or to whomever you have your production meeting with here in the practice management team. So there will be a PDF follow-up, as I mentioned, and so you can be on the lookout for that coming your way. It'll have a few tidbits of information, just a couple highlights, and that path to get to the resources. And there will also be a survey that will be emailed out from GoToWebinar automatically after today's call. And if you wouldn't mind taking just a couple minutes to complete that brief survey, it's real helpful to give us feedback. We do look at those, and it helps us to develop our class series for this as we move forward, because we do take into account the kind of feedback we get. And then as we shared at the beginning, everybody kind of gave names and locations, and just don't forget about each other, because a lot of times your peers in other practices can really be your best resources. So feel free to reach out to each other. If somebody shared something that you're like, oh, who was that? I want to reach out to that person. Please, and you didn't catch the name, please just reach out to us in practice management, and we can help you determine who it is and provide that contact information to you. All right, if there's nothing else, I will let you guys go for today. And thank you very much for your participation. We appreciated you joining us.